And we're back. Welcome to episode 13 after a bit of a hiatus from your boys of the Fog You the Chance of Seagulls podcast. My name is Clark. I'm joined by my good friend Evan. Both of us were traveling for the last 3 weeks and just didn't make sense, didn't line up for us to record. And thankfully, nothing really significant happened in the Giants organization during this time. So, but yeah, take it away, Evan. What are a couple things that we missed? Because, we missed a fair bit. The season ended, frankly. So,
Frankly, the season did end. Also, I think there were some perhaps that were holding out hope that we would somehow claw our way back into the playoffs. That did not happen. Perhaps there were some that wanted to see the chiseled jaw of Re-Kap-ler for one more season. They were too disappointed as well. And yeah, I think it's been I'd say the biggest things that have happened with the Giants, honestly, are Tyler Fitzgerald playing well and Kap-ler getting fired and kind of Farhan kind of publicly kind of saying that things are going to change a little bit in terms of the way the org has been is
how
going to be
much do
run.
you believe him? How much is changing here? What's your read on this? Because to me, it feels a little lip servicey that fans are outraged. The season didn't end well. So he, in order to keep his job, needs to kind of admit that something went wrong.
Mhm.
But yeah, do you have a different take on that?
So I don't know why, but I was up late not last night, and I watched the whole his end of the year
Mm.
conference with reporters, and it's interesting to watch that because it's very um yeah, on the surface it's a seemingly benign kind of exercise, at the end of the year, just talking about what was up. But it's the job of the media and reporters ultimately to get to the bottom of certain things and express discontent from fans and get answers that, the people who read their stuff and listen to their stuff want to know. And there's a lot of people challenging Farhan the whole interview of just yeah, this is true, but have you thought about this? And I think that is um I'm not so sure that the idea to fire Gabe came from Farhan. I think that they PR'd it that way to make it so that he, um, has is taking some agency in that and admitting some fault. Um, it's been interesting to see. I feel like in the reaction to that, for the most part, has been, yeah, but you should be fired. Not people hate Gabe, and then as soon as they fired him, they're like, yeah, 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 whatever. But it's you, and it's interesting. But
I thought that dynamic was really funny because
yeah,
I saw the exact same thing. It was sort of hypocritical, but also just clear that fan outrage was fan outrage. It was,
yeah,
and I think justifiably, but people were telling on themselves by as soon as Gabe got fired, being like, "Well, he's kind of a scapegoat for everything." It's well, you were just saying he should be fired the last
y-
2 months.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, they want both of them to be fired, obviously, but um, I think I think that his control of how everything works is going to be um, slightly altered in this coming season. I think that's the whole thing with the managers having kind of a dissenting voice um, in the mix. And I think this is not my original point, but a few beat writers have made the assertion that when it comes time to pick a manager, likely it's not going to be, he really had some latitude in bringing Gabe over, with all the controversy. And uh, other desires from fans in the front office, but they trusted him and they trusted the process. And I think now that um, he's really all signs point to him not being his contract not being renewed, and so with that, it's kind of really a show me year, and so um, I think that when he goes to pick it, the front office is going to say yes or no, and he has to listen to that. So I think, and I think um, that there's some interesting things that he said in the press conference too, in regards to he seems to be really focused on winning, which is good, right? Like that's what fans want to hear. But um, I think I, I think that he potentially maybe um, has a little shallow view of what it takes to get fans involved in a team, and I think that winning doesn't do that alone. Like um, you know, the apologists for this front office are always going to talk about 2021, but people didn't show up to the park in 2022. And um and I think that like we've talked about it obviously, but just things with continuity and just feeling invested in the team and less roster churn and people talk about stars and sometimes I'm like does it really, but it does matter to people who are
Yeah,
paying
I
to
want to
go. Yeah.
yeah, I want to extrapolate on that point a little bit. I think that's been the most clear, I think, distinction that's come from this season is that, and I don't think previous regimes necessarily did this intentionally, that they were like, hey, we're going to build out some fan favorites so everyone has someone to root for and there is growing interest. And I have been in favor for the most part of the platoon advantage, understanding that like we're in this transition time in this organization, but Farhan and Gabe were really trying to kind of get every ounce of production out of what was, a pretty average, maybe slightly above average lineup at best. And you were talking about 2021, and I think the reflection for me is less that, oh, platooning works, is more that like that year we had Posey, Belt, Crawford, Longoria, who all played like superstars or carried themselves as, bona fide all-star caliber guys. And not only did fans obviously have the rooting interest of those three homegrown guys that they could follow in the footsteps and just kind of like, cheer through them. And then it opened up the door for guys like Wade, like Estrada, obviously Yaz, although I feel like Yaz is more in that Crawford Belt Posey camp now. He feels like a forever giant. Hashtag forever
Yeah.
giant. Um, but I think that year started off with the like stars, so to speak. And I think in the last 2 years we've assumed that Belt and Crawford could carry that mantle on their own, or with Yastrzemski adding Jock in there. I think we assumed that those guys would have the same kind of like star power. And to me, it just gives such a perspective of what he did for a team. And you can't quantify it except for like the results that happened when he was on the field. But I get back to the idea that I think he's just a once in a generation type guy. And I'm curious to see how we create that like star power or that kind of like, because we do need a guy to like rally the troops. And I think Logan Webb is clearly trying to be that guy. And and we can talk about Logan, he had a phenomenal year. Um, and he might be that guy, but I think we need a guy on the offensive side of things as well. I don't know. What do you feel
Yeah,
about that?
I definitely agree. I mean, um, we've discussed it, but I think you look at 2021 and like not to take away anything from like the Giants extracting as much value as possible out of Crawford and Belt and Posey and everything, but how much of that success was due to Buster just like giving it his all, and like I have to assume like keeping charge of the clubhouse too. I think that
That was a
that
big
is
thing that came out
yeah,
at the end of the year.
and I think that that is probably one of the bigger marks on Kapler as a manager, in the sense of, as like I think that he made some indefensible decisions in game, but for the most part, he was playing by the script and played it pretty well. Do you know what I mean? Like I
Hmm.
think that I think it's more cultural and organizational, what Buster brought to the table that year. And then, you know, you look at all the years that Buster wasn't involved in the Giants, and it's a stark difference. And we've talked about it, but I think there's some there's some reasons beyond his family wants to live in the Bay again that he's back, and I think wanting to be involved, and fans who want him to be
Yeah.
the manager are the stupidest people I've ever heard of, because he can't, because he's on the ownership group. But I think that he brought a lot to the table, and I think just one more point is that I think that you're right that like it wasn't this intentional thing to bring in stars. That the previous regime had. And I think that when they did, it more than not kind of failed, like with Rowan or Zito or something like that. Do you know what I mean? And so I think that there's pros and cons to that approach, but I think that they're able to go do that because they're building upon a foundation of these homegrown quote unquote stars, or just kind of consistent stalwarts that you can put in the lineup. That was all.
And I think that's so perfectly put. And I think that's what this regime is going for too. We just haven't had the homegrown stars work yet. And this was the first year of it even showing any semblance of happening at all. And I think you mentioned it at the beginning, but the end of the season, since the last time we recorded, Marco played the last like 10 days, two
Mm,
weeks of the season, started at shortstop when Crawford was out. And I don't think there's even much of a debate whether or not he's going to be our starting shortstop next year.
right.
Tyler Fitzgerald came in and played amazing. Now we saw that from Schmidt to start his time up. So like it's a bummer that we didn't see Fitzgerald sooner so we could kind of see him go
Yeah.
through the struggles. But I do think as a bottom line, like he brings speed and versatile defense that's going to play for this team. Um, and obviously we got Bailey.
Hmm.
Matos, I think, I mean, he's 21. He had kind of a struggle of a year, but if you just kind of assume that he was brought up a year too early because of
Hmm.
injuries to guys like Haniger and Conforto and Yaz and Slater. Geez, our whole outfield was hurt at multiple points of this year. I think we are seeing that foundation, and Webby, Harrison, um, yeah, I mean the list goes on and on. I could name all these guys, but I think we're seeing that play out, and hopefully what you're talking about is kind of that, like, yeah, the homegrown stars are is the thing that's going to bring people back to caring about the Giants again.
Yeah, and like to speak in war terms quickly, like I think wins above replacement. Um,
War,
uh,
what is it
is
good
it
for?
good for? Absolutely nothing. I watched
Oh wait,
an essay about
but
Rush
here's a
Hour. No, anyway, recently, but I think that really what this team needs is more like 3, 4, 5 win stars, rather than like obviously it'd be great to have, Otani level superstar type people, but like you don't need that for like a team to be what it needs to be. Like you can do some of its parts greater than some of its parts thing if you have contributors like that. And I would say obviously it's nice to have a few um, top of the order type guys, but um, this is gonna be a dumb point, kind of, but like I think that the Dodgers this year, like if you take Freddie and Betts out of the conversation, which you can't, but like it's like the rest of their team was like kind of the spare parts thing. Do you know what I mean?
It
And they won
was.
100 games. They're looking rough in the postseason right now, but
Yeah,
yeah,
I
I
want
don't
to get
know.
back to that at some point. But yeah, I think it's a fair point. And I think that to me, if we're like taking the zoom out approach, the lesson I take from this season is we're not that far from being right in the postseason mix. I think in many ways the season did not go very well, and yet we were still in it to start September, and then had an awful September, which just puts the worst taste in your mouth. But I mean, there was a point when we first started recording these that we were like the third best team in the National League,
Yeah.
and that team I think is still in there somewhere. Um, But I also just don't think, I mean, at the deadline, and I think we talked about it a lot, but the deadline came around and we didn't really do anything. And Jordan Montgomery is starting game one for the Rangers after they traded for him. But the Rangers were in such a better place to trade for a guy like Montgomery because they were already all in with Seager, Simeon, Adolis Garcia has been good for a couple years now. Like, and I think we even talked about this or somewhat recently ago. It's like, they are ahead of where we want to be. I am very happy for Bochy, but like, there's a reason he's managing that team and not ours, and it's not because Farhan kicked him out, which I saw was a take earlier this week on Twitter. But
Mm-mm.
it's like Bochy Bochy is too much of a veteran manager. Same with Dusty, for that matter. These guys are going to manage good teams. They're not going to manage rebuilding teams, and that's what the Giants are. We're a rebuilding team, and 2021, I think, screwed up that mentality. Um, and the front office's insistence that we're going to be a playoff team. But I admire that. I don't want to be like the Orioles or the Astros or the Cubs, where they bottom out. They have 5 awful years. And then hopefully you get enough draft luck to where all these young guys come up at the same time. I just don't see that as a realistic outcome for this franchise. The Giants never want to do that. And frankly, as a fan, I'm not that down with it. So if we have to struggle through these mediocre seasons, I mean, I'm so okay with it. And again, like I said, we've got young guys coming up and who will be on the team opening day next year, who I'm very excited for. So
Yeah, I think to go back to the Rangers, it's like right now you're seeing Evan Carter, this rookie, just tear it up in the postseason. And I think this may be a little bit simplistic, but I think part of that reason is because there are so many like just guys you can trust in the lineup already, and the
mhm,
pressure isn't there. I know we go back to this all the time, but I think that's part of it. And I think that um, that's kind of there's a little bit, this may be a little bit dramatic, but I think there's a little bit of this boomer bust thing with our lineup construction right now because I think that there's a high ceiling for all our young guys, but the floor is low too and can
yep,
be really low. And um and yeah, and I think that this I almost feel like it's going to be a mandate from the people at the top that like um, some trades or free agent signings are going to have to be made that like energize the fan
yeah,
base, regardless of like baseball strategy or whatever. Like it's just something's going to have to be done, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But like I think it's just there's no way
we got
people
to push.
accept that that
And
is
that's
true.
that Rowan and Zito kind of comparison there is like those moves didn't end up like mattering, but they kind of mattered at the same time. It like showed that we were
Yeah,
trying to win, and yeah,
and And I'll say, do you know what I mean? Aaron Rowan, Barry Zito, both part of playoff teams. Obviously, I
kind of.
think
Sorry.
I mean, not in the way that you envision, but like still like that era. Like I think
Yeah.
just in the way of like they're trying to do something. And I think
Hmm.
that with you could look at like Cueto and Samardzija, like when you look back on it, are you like, were these the best things ever? Like, no, not necessarily, but you know, it's easy to look back at the 2016 series with the Cubs and like look at what could have happened. And like I think that the playoffs this year are showing um,
Oh, absolutely.
that it's a crapshoot, and it's always been a crapshoot. But it could be D-backs Phillies in the DS this year, and I don't know, like that's just how it goes. Like you just have
Well,
to
and
like try.
If it's D-backs Phillies, it shows the two sides of this exact conversation that we're having, which is build through the farm and just get a bunch of exciting young players with a couple veterans mixed in. And then the opposite side is throw all your money at all these exciting players and overspend multiple times. And come October, you're going to have guys who, A, aren't scared of a big moment, but also who the fans know and identify with and are so excited by. These Phillies crowds, man, have been nuts during the wild card round. They were nuts. That Bryson Stott video where they cut the broadcast and just listen to the crowd sing his walk-up song to him, and then he hits a grand slam, might have been my favorite moment of this entire baseball season. That was an incredible, incredible moment. If you haven't seen it, please check it out. But I think those two represent the kind of two sides of the like where the Giants are at right now. Because we would love to be the Dodgers and Braves, create sustainable excellence, a lineup 1 through 9 that
Mhm.
had historic rates, all that stuff. But there are multiple ways to do it, and I think regardless of where we're at, I mean,
Yeah.
it won't take too much to get there,
And I mean, you look at that fan base this year, and it's like they revived Trey Turner from the dead. And like
right?
our fans are not doing that for
No,
anybody.
we could have revived Gabe Kapler from the dead, and the whole franchise was like, "No, God, great choice, get
No.
him out of here."
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's uh-oh, brain stopped. What was I gonna say? Um I yeah, I think that fun, like to go back to like maybe who the next manager is going to be. I think
Hmm.
that when we think about that, it's like kind of eh, the things that are important there are a lot of things that they were hoping Kapler would bring to the table. I think in that player development at the major league level was kind of like the big thing with Kapler that he was going to bring um, to the table. And I think that there were moments of that, but I think um, it's in these next few years, it's really imperative that some of these guys take the next step and become everyday players.
Yeah,
And that's not fully up to the manager, too. Um, but yeah, I'd say that that is kind of the the foremost thing that I am hoping for in the new manager because, like, um, there's going to be 15, 20 guys coming back from this year's roster. Like, it's not going to be, you can't do a complete overhaul. You can't bring, like, the free agent market is not deep. Like, there's only so many options that you can do. So, really, you just have to get better and refine your processes. And I think that that's really what I'm looking for in the next manager. What about you?
yeah. Um, any candidates that you're thinking of at this point?
Well, as we record this right now, your name in the thing is Stephen Vogt, so I think that's definitely a name that's come up, and I think that
Yes,
that's
sir.
a solid shout. I think it doesn't sound like if I could choose, I'd probably choose Craig Counsell if he did not renew
Ooh,
with the Brewers. But just because I think he brings that younger energy with kind of like just a good baseball feel and like he's like I think made the most out of teams with not much, which
hmm.
it is really the challenge of this offseason. But
I'd
I
say
think
if the Dodger series continues to go the way it is right now, and it's Diamondbacks are up 2-0, maybe Roberts is available this offseason. So, and he's been great for the Giants. So,
Oh, Giants fans would love that. I mean, he did play for us, so
He
I
did.
I
Former forever giant.
Yeah. Well, I think, this kind of mixing different streams of what we're talking about, but I
Mhm.
think you're seeing in the postseason people doing what the Giants do all year. And
Right.
I think that the playoffs is the right time for that to push every chip in and I read the article about what Rob Thompson did for the Phillies in game 1 against the Braves and how he, had this whole plan of because earlier in the offseason we had the whole Barrios thing that there was a lot of controversy about him being pulled early, but Ranger Suarez was starting, who's like their 4 guy maybe, and
Mhm.
he basically told the whole staff, he told all the whole bullpen, all the pitchers, all the position players, all the coaches, but ended up not telling Suarez that he was going to pull him early in advance of the game. But it was the plan from the get to just use velocity to overpower the Braves offense because their slugging percentage on fastballs over 98 miles per hour was so much lower. And it worked. And it was a big gamble, but it worked. But I think that's something you can do every so often. Do you know what I mean? And like you said earlier, um, if fans are expecting pencil in 9 guys in the lineup every day and that's what it is, you're not going to get that. We're still going to be
Right.
platooning. We're still going to be using openers on occasion, as the Dodgers do, by the way. But I think it's kind of too like with a manager. There's being the regular season manager, and then there's having that extra gear in the playoffs, which is something that obviously Bochy has. And not to discredit what he did with in the regular season, although they almost lost it.
I know.
Just gonna say, but in the postseason, he just knows what he's doing, and
Yep.
I think that comes from confidence, and it's a little bit of a feel thing too. Um, so yeah, I don't know. Are there any other names that come to mind for you?
Yeah, 2 more names that I think so a lot of Bay Area media have floated around Bob Melvin. Even before Kapler got fired, there was a Kawakami piece on The Athletic talking about Melvin, and I would be very happy with Bob Melvin.
Except
But
he's
the
he's
Padres have
coming
to
back with
buy
the
him out.
Padres.
Is it confirmed? I didn't see
Yeah.
that that was
Yeah, I
confirmed. Okay.
saw Preller
So,
or somebody say Preller and Melvin, or the people above that, Seidler was saying
gotcha.
Melvin, and
So
they
they're
were saying
back. Although they said that about Kapler about a week before he got canned, so
that's true. That's true.
but no, that's I didn't see that, so thank you for that. The other name is Wotus. I think Ron Wotus would be a very interesting pick for us. I think it would bring back a lot of I don't know if trust is the right word, but faith that we're keeping with the Giants' way, if that makes sense. Like
Hmm.
the thing about bringing Farhan and Kapler in is it's this both of these guys were in the Dodgers organization and they bring this just different brand of baseball. And between you and me, I don't know if it's that different. It's just trying to find advantages where you can. And Bochy was doing a lot of the same things. You just talked about how Bochy does all of that in the playoffs. So I don't think the differences are that stark, but I think in terms of just fan sentiment, Wotus would bring a lot. And I think it would be such a cool thing for him to have been in this organization for so long and finally be the manager of this new crop. Um, so I think between Vote and Wotus, those would be my 2 picks. There's some other fringe guys that I think are interesting as well, like bench coaches. I can't remember his name, but he um, applied when Kapler did, bench coach for the Astros.
Espada?
Yeah, exactly. So
He's
I'd be
always
interested
mentioned,
in
yeah.
him, but
Um,
yeah,
yeah. I,
that's where I go.
I think those are good. Those are good names. I think Wotus is interesting because um, in that Kawakami piece you reference, his whole pitch was extend Zaidi and then bring in, a manager. So there's certainty on that front. I think there's a lot of
Hmm.
pushback from fans, obviously, on that, and probably the front office as well. And but I
Maybe I
think
get the sense that Farhan is very well liked within ownership. I don't know,
I
but
I
anyway,
do
I
I
didn't
do
mean
t-
to.
I do too because I think he is a consummate professional and is good at what he does. I don't know. I think he is too, but I think that you know, people want to see a winning product on the field and they want to see butts and seats at the end of the day. Um,
True.
but I think a thing about a point for Wotus is that like you could have him around for a year, and then if a new front office comes in and you clean house, then like it's not the worst thing in the world necessarily. And I think that, to your point about like Gabe and Farhan being like part of the Dodgers culture, and then we brought him over here to try to do the same thing that the Dodgers do. Um, I think for better for worse, in the 2000s, the Giants have done things the Giants way for the most part, and then we've been trying a different thing that's worked at times, but like is a little touch and go, um, and I think that in terms of manager continuity, there hadn't been a firing since like the 80s or something, of a Giants
Yeah.
manager. And, we were blessed with the continuity of Dusty and Felipe and Boch. And everybody just left at the time that felt right or whatever. Nobody was getting kicked out
Hmm.
ahead of time. And I kind of think that a big point for Wotus is that like it's very much like the Giants way, to reward people that are part of the organization and whatever. So I like that name. I think I would guess um, Mark Hallberg is going to get a lot of consideration
Oh,
as well.
it's a
Um,
good one.
he's a current third base coach, but um, he seems, from interviews and videos I've watched, seems very smart. And I think, but honestly, the biggest mark for him is that he's friends with Buster, was college roommates, and I think that association would go a long way for fans, even though he's not like a player that people know or something like that. Um, and I think that also within the Wotus thing would be like Pat Burrell, maybe,
Hmm.
just to like kind of bring a much like that's a very different energy into the clubhouse. But he's
Yeah.
been working as a roving
Scout, I
development
think.
guy or
Yeah.
scout or yeah, I
One
don't
of the
know,
two.
something like
Yeah.
that. But
I think
I
he
could
and
see him
Vote
too.
exist kind of in the same area.
Yeah,
And Wotus and Hallberg are very similar, but I think your point was very astute of like what ownership's kind of intention with this hire is. If it's a 1 year kind of show me year, or if this is all right, let's get back on the right track, or let's commit to kind of a focused like route, so to
yeah,
speak, with a new manager keeping Farhan. And
yeah.
curious to see what they say, but I think all the names that we've mentioned would be good candidates.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's unlikely that Farhan like I think if he does well next year, then maybe an extension will be on the table. But in all likelihood, it really is a show me year for both
Hmm.
manager and him as well. And I will say just one last thing about the manager that I don't think has been acknowledged, and I don't think is acknowledged enough in the modern game is like um and, I think those names like a spot there's always these names that come up for every managerial search. But I do think fluency or at least competence in Spanish is like a huge thing, especially with young guys and just being able to speak to them directly. And I know that there's plenty of interpreters and people on staff who can speak Spanish. Do you know what I mean? I just feel like if you could get a really dynamic, I think it's why somebody like, he's had his ups and downs in his career, but Alex Cora was like, I think really good at being able to like go through both worlds and connect to different
Hmm.
sides of clubhouses. And with this team, I think it's as important, with the Lucianos and Matoses and Ramos. I don't know.
Doval. I mean, we've got some of
Doval, yeah,
our big studs who speak Spanish. So Estrada, I think one of the cool things from the season, this is tangent, but just off your point, is how much of a leadership kind of hat that Tyro put on this year. We haven't mentioned yet, but he won the Willie Mack Award, which I think is such a huge deal for a guy that we
for you.
bought for cash. I'll get to that in just a second. Um, but who we bought for cash from the Yankees, and the fact that he's come over and in 3 years now just become one of the leaders of this team. Um, I think to your point, Spanish like Spanish ability in terms of our leadership in the clubhouse needs to be at the forefront of this decision. But I also feel that with like Wilmer and Tyro, that can be done through the clubhouse. Like it can be done through some of the guys on the team. But I agree, having a bilingual manager for any organization would be such a plus.
Yeah.
But yeah, do you want me to share
Yeah.
here where the Willie Mac? So my girlfriend and I, for the last 2 years, have done a bet for the Willie Mack Award. We each pick 3 people who we think might win it at the end of the year. And then starting this year, the winner um, gets a jersey of the person who won, purchased by the other person. So last year, I picked Wilmer. She made fun of me. Ha ha ha. But she picked Webb and Tyro last year. Well, this year she picked Webb and I picked Tyro. And so I win again. And she's so mad that she was a year early on Tyro. But this week I will be getting a Tyro jersey in the mail. I promise to wear it for you video people for next episode. I'm wearing a different shirt right now, but
Hell yeah.
yeah,
No,
fun
that's
stuff.
really
Love the
cute.
Willie Mac. I think we might add that to our pod for next year. Or I'd like to do
Oh,
some sort
yeah.
of gag on that.
Yeah, you,
But
me,
yeah,
and Amanda
shouts
should
to
do a
Tyro.
draft. I
Would
think,
love that.
yeah, I think that that's a good point that you make regarding Tyron Wilmer. I think, it's hard to know how much because, like, when you read these articles that have come out at the end of the year, there's like implications being made, and you're kind of
Hmm.
having to read between lines and stuff. And I think the thing is, like, it's great seeing Tyro like step into a leadership role. I think the point has been made by Grant, especially that we just need more skronk. I think is the word that he used in in
A
in the
great
clubhouse,
Grantism. Yep.
and I think that, like, you know, realistically, Tyro and Wilmer and Yaz are like some of the senior guys in this group, but they quote unquote, but they are more mild mannered guys. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes it's like
Hmm.
it's got to be like, hey, let's go. Like, no more of this.
A
We got to
Hunter
change things
Pence
up.
type.
Exactly. Or like, like Pat Burrell when he came to the team and changed the clubhouse culture or whatever. And I think that's why he's being mentioned as a candidate as much as he is. And so I think I'd love to see, and like, I it's kind of low hanging fruit, but like with this organization, it was a bunch of Kapler's like handpicked people that we didn't really know their names ahead of time, and then they have a coach that helps people walk bare feet in the outfield, and they're saging this and doing all these things,
Hmm.
um and I think that it's time for a little bit more accountability, because I think there's actually a real potential for success when you bring in accountability back into the picture, because I think what the organization has done well for the most part, um uh Farhan's
Yeah.
administration has rewarded people that do well in the minors and shows that there's a path to the majors. But then
Yep.
once you get to the majors, it's really like, I think that's where the accountability really has to show, because I think I don't know. This is another point I'd love to talk about, but it's kind of like, who do you believe about the state of the farm? But to me, when I look at it, I see a lot more excitement than I felt 5 years ago. Is it the top
Yeah.
10 farm system? No, I don't think so. But at the same time, I think guys are coming. And I think once they arrive, how do we make them stick? And I think that that's
Yeah.
where accountability comes in. So I'm excited, hopefully, to have some semblance of that
I
next year.
agree. And I think that is an argument for the like anti-platooning. Um, is that if we give Marco the job, just go, hey, shortstop's your job. He's going to have the confidence to just play his own game. But if we go, hey, we're bringing in this lefty who will platoon with you, we're going to protect you against righties, just focus on lefties. It feels like we're using kid gloves for a guy who shouldn't need it, you know?
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I'm
Yeah.
excited in that respect, and I agree with everything you said. Can I switch gears real quick?
Yeah, I just want to say real quickly, it would be
Hmm.
better if I knew the who exactly it was, but I was reading some interview about some manager. It might have been Bochy, it might have been Council Thompson, something, but it was a player talking about the value that they felt this year of just like being put in the lineup regardless of their struggles. I think it was Bochy, I want to say,
Mm,
and just like how they felt like he knew that the manager had his back through everything and that they would find it at the end of the day. And, they almost slipped out of the postseason, but that process worked. And then they got there and then now they're finding success there. So I just want to say, I think that that's just adding on to what you're saying, but let's switch gears.
yeah. Um, so I have a question for you. I've noticed that the Giants have been rumored lately for, and I can't remember his full name, but the outfielder from Korea,
Hmm.
as well as Yamamoto from Japan, and then this other kind of this like low level guy named Otani. I don't know if you've heard of him, but with all that in mind, it's been clear through like the rumor mill, and maybe this is just because the NPB is over, and KBO, um, and that we can't talk about like upcoming free agents who are like in the playoffs or whatever. But there's been a lot of rumors over the last couple weeks about us kind of in the Asian market. What do you What do you think about that, as it relates to maybe our Otani search or not Otani search? Yeah. How do you feel about kind of in the free agency realm, those rumors kind of specifically about Asia?
Yeah. Well, I think real quickly, I just want to take a moment to say that any Giants fans who thought that we should hire Shinjo as the manager to attract Asian free agents are the stupidest people in the world.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the smartest. Damn, I was wrong.
No, they think they're being big brained, but that's the silliest thing I've ever heard. I think I'm all for it. I think it's Jung Hoo Lee that you're
Thank you.
referencing,
Yep.
the KBO star, and then there's that pitcher, whose name I don't remember from
Yamamoto. I
Yamamoto.
do have
Yes,
that.
yes, yes.
Yes.
Yoshinobu. Yes. Um,
Thank you.
and I think both intrigue me. I think it's in my dream off season. I'd love to see Lee or Bellinger be a part of next year's team, and I think those are totally acquirable through free agency. I know they'll cost a bit, but I'd love to see them. I think there's fits all around, in my opinion. Like with Yoshinobu, it's I think Farhan has repeatedly said that they're like that we have a lot of depth in with starters, and I think that you're starting to see more guys that you can maybe think about penciling in every fifth day, and with that, it's not worth like looking for more depth pieces. I think that has
Right.
been filled, and so I think somebody li- like Yamamoto with the potential to be a front of the rotation guy actually is a great fit because we're not going to be going for anybody else. I don't know. Like Blake Snell's out there. I don't see him being a Giant. Um,
Nope. Nola.
and Nola, I've had him in fantasy for years, and he
You
always
have.
disappoints me. Also, by the way, we never talked about this, but I fully gave up on fantasy. But I
Yeah,
think,
it was rough. Shout out
yeah.
David who won it and doesn't even know anything about baseball. Love you, buddy. Um,
But yeah, I think the Asian market would be great, and I feel like it's been for some reason, I guess the proximity to Japan, but like the West Coast is an attractive place for Asian players to come, and so I'd love the Giants to like establish themselves as a place for that because I think there's a little bit of um, that Asian players would feel more comfortable going to a team that is like, that fosters Asian talent. So I'm all about it. But
yeah.
also am Asian, so who knows? Maybe that's biasing my
Do you
opinion.
think either helps our chances at all with Otani, or is it going to be dollar signs?
I think marginally. I mean, I think that that I don't know. It's interesting because for a free agent of Otani's caliber, it's it seemingly always comes down to dollar signs, but I'm not entirely sure that that's true for him. I think that he um, really wants to win, and I think that additions outside of him only serve insofar as like, oh, we're trying to win.
Convincing him that we're trying to win.
Yes,
Yeah, I agree.
exactly. But I'm not sure that whatever we do this offseason is really going to influence him one way or another. Um, and I think for my own sanity, as much as it is my pipe dream, I'm kind of like divesting from the idea of Otani being on the Giants. And if he does, then I'll order a jersey the next day. Do you know what I mean? But
Yep,
for now, I just feel like to create we need a more balanced roster. And is a DH going to get us there? Like,
right.
no.
But a
And
DH who can hit 50 homers a year and many, many splash hits still makes me lust after him. But
I
I
mean,
do agree with everything you're saying.
I love it, but I think I feel like another front of the rotation starter, uh, a solid option in center field that we can go to every day. And I think I don't know. There's some the outfield could use some love. Third base is kind of like what's going on there too. I just feel like there's areas that we need to look at above that, but obviously, I mean, if the front office needs me to be involved to scout Shohei, I'll do whatever you need me to do. But I think, yeah, I think I don't know, but, like, at the same time with Shohei, I'm like, what team does he go to? I don't really know, like, who that is. I
Right.
know that, like, the Dodgers have been theoretically clearing the books, but I'm like, I could see them not doing that to you, and anyway, but
Yeah.
what do you think?
Next question for you, based on this a little bit. So you're talking about some of these areas that we need to improve. But then we also want to like open up lanes for our young guys. Schmidt, Matos, Fitzgerald. Are any of them starting opening day? And how many are even in the big leagues on opening day, do you think?
Of those 3, um, I think that recency bias is obviously at play here, but I think that Fitzgerald, you see the vision pretty easily in terms of you know, part of his floor is that he's got that defensive versatility, in the outfield and
And
the infield
speed.
both.
Hmm.
Exactly. And I think that, Chris Taylor has been mentioned as a comp a lot of times, but like that feels like a player that the Giants need right now. I think that Schmidt has um a capability to be a regular offensive player. I'm not sure if that's going to happen this year, next year with the Giants with somebody else. I don't know. Um, but I don't think. Hmm, I think that Matos. I don't know what's leading me to this, but I think that he might make the opening day roster because I think I think there's a lot of pressure on him this year. I know I always talk about this, but I think that it was good to have this experience this year and having that feeling of like trying to do too much and like kind of losing who he is because I think who he is really is who he was the first few weeks when he came up, just confident, sure
Hmm.
of himself, can take good routes to the ball, can hit for maybe not for a huge power, but can hit for contact. And that's a guy that can be on this roster for sure. And I think if we can get him back to just himself, I think that he's worth rostering. Um,
Is he a center fielder to you?
I don't think that we can assume that. I think that he feels like somebody who could like like Yaz play there in a pinch, but I don't feel like he's somebody we should be necessarily anointing that. And I would like, I know I said this already, but I'd rather like Bellinger, Lee, somebody like that, like be taking that center field spot that really is like providing some more offensive value to you, which I know that he could,
Yeah.
but I think
I
I
think
could
that's
see him
the
in a couple
interesting
years.
crux. Yeah, I think that's the interesting crux of this offseason is where does Luis Matos fit into everything? Because we've got Haniger, we've got Yaz, we've got Slater on our roster next year. I assume Conforto's opting out. And so with all of that, it's like the logical place that we have a hole is center field. And I think we want to give Matos every opportunity to be a starter next year. But I also don't think, like you're saying, we can assume that he can be our regular center fielder. I don't think he showed enough last year. And we gave him a lot more runway than we did Fitzgerald, Ramos, some of these other guys in the minors who were older than him. So yeah, I think these are the kind of hinge points for this upcoming offseason is what do we think about Matos? Is Schmidt our third baseman, or are we rolling with JD Davis? I thought Davis was like pretty good this year overall. He's so hot and cold at the plate, but his defense was pretty solid overall. And we could stand to improve other parts of the roster. But I think this is what's tough is like we've like boxed ourselves in by trying to be competitive. That a guy like Haniger now is in the lineup, and we're hoping he's good enough, kind of thing. So,
Mm.
but yeah, we're getting close to time. So yeah, I just wanted to throw a couple of those questions at you. Any other thoughts just in terms of like reflecting on the season, what you're hopeful going into the off season? Um,
Um, Nothing big. Uh, we can talk about this later, but I did think it was interesting that Bags made a lot of pointed remarks about Jock in his end of season articles,
yeah, we didn't
um,
mention that at all. Yeah.
and I think that um, giving him the qualifying offer this year is actually maybe one of the bigger mistakes that we don't talk about enough,
Hmm.
um, and so and so it'll be interesting to see what happens. I mean, he's not coming back, I assume,
No
but
chance. Yeah, I don't
um,
think there's a chance.
yeah. So I don't know. I think that I was shocked by the Kap-ler firing, to be honest, like just the way how quickly it happened and everything. But I think I think some self-awareness going into this offseason and some just like some more dissenting voices I think will be really good for this franchise. And yeah, and it's like I guess last point I want to make is that um in all the playoff postseason stuff talk, um people talk about the stars of different teams and they talk about the D-backs and the only person they reference is Corbin Carroll. Do you know what I mean? And like that
Right.
that can be a guy like that can do a lot for putting you on the map. And they talk about him as if that's enough to like power an offense. And like that's not how baseball offenses work. They about other guys that are underrated. But I think that's something to think about. And if, a Matos could become that or one of the young guys can become that, then that'd be great. But yeah, I think all I'll say is we have yet to figure out what our schedule will be going into the off season, but I think we'll be doing some episodes here and there, probably not weekly, but please don't unsubscribe. That was really bad. Don't
Don't touch it up.
unsubscribe. Because we will be back and yeah, and thank you for listening this season. Hopefully more happy things to talk about next year.
Yeah. I'd like to end too, just like overall, it was a really fun season. And I think it got clouded by what was a truly awful August and September. And I think there are reasons to be optimistic based on the earlier part of the year. I also think we need to change a lot of things if we want to avoid the type of baseball that we watched to end the year. So, but go Giants, go Tyro.
Go Tyro. And we'll see you in the next one. Eh?
Yeah.